Hello and welcome to this O&DR Modurol video, Jaguar XK8 A-pillar retrim. This is video 185 in our series of XK8 videos. In this video we're going to try and help you avoid all the pitfalls we fell into whilst trying to retrim our A-pillar covers. Now we're in the middle of replacing our headliner on our 1996 Jaguar XK8 and we need to recover the A-pillars to match the new headliner, particularly in our case because the previous owner had already recovered them in a beige or a creamy colour, which wasn't exactly OEM. We needed to cover it in oatmeal for our car. We want you to try and avoid the mistakes we got into. The main ones were the actual resulting mistakes, which were indents and glue marks, which were present on the first attempt of us doing it and the previous owner's attempt. I'm going to show you how to avoid that with a preferred method of covering these. If you're interested, the Jaguar part numbers are there. There is a slight difference from model year 2003 onwards, and there are lots of slightly different part number variants, so please look out and make sure you have the right part number if you need to buy a new one. The difference in part numbers might be down to the fact that the original trim panels were made of compressed board, as in the case of my A-pillar trim panels, but later on plastic injection moulded parts were used. I'm not quite sure what year that was, but that might explain the variation in part numbers, the material used to make them, and also the addition of the sensors. The tools we used there was basically three levels of tools. The basic tools just to recover them. You need a trim tool, a pair of scissors and some contact spray adhesive. If you need to actually remove any of the old foam, you're going to have to clean the actual panel itself. You're going to need a scrubbing brush and some coarse sandpaper. And if in our case you're going to need to repair them, you're going to need some plastic, ideally takeaway tub plastic, some all-purpose contact adhesive and some method of clamping. We're going to break down this video very comprehensively into different chapters, focus on different elements of the process we went through. First of all, we're going to look at the A-pillar locations. Before you actually take them off, we always find it easier to show you where the locations are to try and avoid any damage. Secondly, the removal of the trim itself. Third, the removal of the old fabric. Then we'll look at fabric colours and the cutting of the fabric. Then actually the trim repair. We had to repair our panel trim. Then the application of the glue, and finally our first attempt, I'll show you the problems we had, and then the better method we used afterwards. Okay then, A-pillar locations. Now there are 4 location points that hold the A-pillar trim onto the car. There are 3 spring clips and a single location pin. Now on the car itself, you can see here once it's removed, the location hole is at the top for the pin, and there's 3 slots for the clips going down the metal A-pillar internal surface. Later cars from model year 2001 onwards have ARTS, sensors and wiring, which is active restraint technology system. For those who aren't familiar with what ARTS is, it's basically the airbag system. Hence some of those A-pillar designs will be different. You'll have a different part number. Next, the trim removal itself. It's really easy to remove it, but you can damage them, as I found. You need to get your trim tool and push it behind the A-pillar trim at the top and lever it inboard into the car. The spring clip should release, allowing the trim to be removed easily. You might need to remove the door seal out of the way and actually use your trim tool to release the clips further down. You need to do the same for the other side. Here you can see a picture showing the location pins, the holes as they're removed. Okay, once removed you should see something like this, and that's the easy bit. Fabric removal then. If you had got the original fabric, the foam backing will have broken down and gone into bits. The fabric should just fall off. You will then have a problem. You need to use a scrubbing brush to remove the old foam from the trim, and it's very, very messy, believe me. In my case, the previous owner had stuck down some new trim, and it wasn't particularly well done. It was heavily glued in some areas, you can see here, and almost no glue in some others. So the fabric was quite easy to pull off, except from some very localized areas. So hopefully you're able to remove the old fabric in one piece. Then we'll move on to fabric and cutting. For your information, if you want to get fabric, there are two main fabric colours used for the Jaguar XK8 XKR X100, AGD Oatmeal or LFJ Nimbus Grey. There are some headliner suppliers actually will offer you a beige headliner, as my car had previously fitted, and this is not the correct colour, for my car at least. Now the method we used to cut the fabric was to use the old fabric as a template. We then got a permanent pen. We drew round the original fabric cover. If you don't get the original fabric off in one piece, you can add approximately 25mm onto the outline of the trim panel. Make sure the fabric is the right way up though before you do that. Basically the foam side is the side you're going to apply the glue, and you need to mark that side as the inside. The piece of fabric we were supplied with the headliner was 650mm by 240, obviously two pieces. When we drew round, we could have got away with slightly smaller piece, 600mm by 170, obviously for each A-pillar. We then cut around the fabric simply with a pair of sharp scissors. The trim repair. Now we needed to repair the trim because it was cracked in the middle. I think that one spring clip was quite well attached, and the previous owner again had actually took it off quite roughly and broke it. You can see there's a big crack right the way through the middle. We tried PVA glue inside the crack without any success. That didn't hold for a moment. So we tried gluing plastic strips from a takeaway plastic box with some clear contact adhesive. Now that actually worked out surprisingly well. You can see there it's very low profile fix, and there's no flexing of the panel whatsoever. So I was really quite impressed with that little very cheap fix reinforcing that area. What we did have then is the outer face. We needed to smooth it with some sandpaper because we didn't quite get it aligned perfectly. So we used some coarse sandpaper to rough the surface up and remove that step. Sanding was also helpful in removing any old excess glue. As I say, on my panel, the previous owner got a bit excited in some areas with the glue. There was lots of glue in some areas, and I peeled that off with my fingers, or like I said, with the sandpaper. After sanding, we had a reasonably smooth surface ready for glue. I'm not sure if it helps to rough the surface up for the glue contact adhesive, but it's more getting rid of the bumps that might show through in the final fabric application. The results seem to be quite strong strength-wise, and hopefully it'll hold up for another few years. Glue application then. We used a high temperature contact adhesive. We've been advised to use that because in the summer, obviously your headliner can get very hot, being on just inside the roof, and we didn't want the glue to melt. Advice, one piece of advice is make sure your nozzle is clean, otherwise it will spray anywhere. We'd previously used this contact adhesive before, and I didn't think to clean the nozzle, and it was spraying. It sprayed at sort of 90-degree angle from the nozzle. It was all over the place. We tried to apply evenly on the fabric and the trim piece. It takes roughly 5 to 10 minutes to get it until it's touch dry. That's when you can actually use it. But obviously follow the adhesive instructions on the can, whichever type you buy. Whatever you do, don't do it outside like I did. It needs to be in a well-ventilated area, but not in a windy area. My first piece actually blew over onto itself, and I got glue on the fabric outer surface, and it was basically a scrap. So a bit of advice there, don't do it where it's windy. The first attempt then, which wasn't successful, we tried to apply the fabric to avoid these pressure marks you've seen on the original one. The idea was to lie the part on to the fabric and then smooth the fabric over the trim. So basically push it down. It makes a reasonably good contact there. And then we used our, basically trying not to have any point contact, but to smooth it across with my fingers. But you can see there's lots of scope in this method for pressure marks with your fingertips and wrinkles, because I'm basically touching the outer surface quite a lot to push it down. As you can see, it's gluing okay, but it's not particularly smooth. And despite me rubbing the top surface to try and flatten it out, the contact adhesive is already taken. It doesn't move at all. The fabric will not move much, if at all, once it's actually stuck. You can push down as much as you want, but it won't smooth out those lumps. And if anything, it'll actually end up with these little pressure marks and dimples or indents on the surface. Another thing is obviously your fingers get covered in glue. You need to make sure you you clean your hands periodically. If you get any glue onto your hand, whatever you do, don't carry on. You need to clean that off, because you'd only get it on the outer surface, and you'll really have a problem with that. You can see I've got a pressure mark there where I've pushed it with my thumb inadvertently, and at this point I was starting to think this is not a good way of doing it. I've done exactly what the previous owner's done. There you go, I need to wash my hands. The result really was very lumpy and uneven, and I wasn't really happy at all. You can see it's lots of lumps and bumps. It's one of the things, it probably would be okay, but I think I could have done better. So I thought I'd remove the fabric and start again. Now, once you've applied the new fabric, obviously the glue sticks to the new foam, and the fabric is pulled off the foam, and the foam will basically be stuck on your panel. So I needed to remove that with coarse sandpaper again. It does take a while, but you can get it all off. The better method then, learning from our mistakes. The idea was I've made these sort of little pointers now, so that start with the fabric attaching at the top end. This method basically avoids touching the visible surface as much as possible, and absolutely definitely no point contact on that visible surface. Then basically the idea is to, once the end is attached, then wipe the fabric underneath through the middle to the top of the panel. Then, starting from the centre, stretch the fabric out and up to contact the trim face. Now, this stretching will help to reduce any lumps and bumps, as the excess fabric will be pulled out. And if you move from the centre outwards, it'll be pushed out towards the corners, so you won't get any build-up of excess material. As I say, work out from the centre outwards, doing the same thing. Then basically fold the excess fabric again from the centre outwards to the outside. So this is the method in practice. So you get your panel and your fabric both individually sprayed. Contact the trim panel on the bottom, wipe through the centre of the part, making sure you line your fabric correctly. Then basically from the middle, stretch the fabric, pull it and stretch it up towards the panel. Stretch and up, stretch and up. This way you're pulling any excess material out, and once the fabric touches the panel, the adhesive takes straight away. So you pull it out and up, out and up. Again, working from the center outwards. There you go. Working out to the end. Then round the front or the bottom edge. Now, finally, then fold the excess material around the hidden area. Again, it's not so critical, but work from the center out to the ends. Again, middle out to the end. It's very easy to stick because you've got adhesive on both sides of the panel. The adhesive really does stick very well. I finally took the top piece in, and there you go. It's very quick and easy to do it that way, and the result is it's not perfect, but it's a massive improvement. So you can see there I didn't really touch the visible surface at all, and I used sort of a stretch and pull upwards, and I use the fabric itself to contact the panel, and it really does get about as smooth a surface finish as you're going to get. Obviously this side isn't quite as critical because you don't see it, but as I said, not perfect, but definitely an improvement. So recommendations, if you're going to do it, obviously make sure you've got clean hands. As I say, your spray can nozzle is clean, because if you spray that off at an angle, it's probably going to go on your fabric. Believe me, it did with mine. Avoid touching the visible area. Let the fabric do the work. Definitely no point contact at all. That will just leave you with a little divot or indent in your fabric. Stretch the fabric over the trim itself. Let the fabric do the work. Work from the middle outwards to make sure any excess fabric is pulled out to the corners where you can't see it. And finally, the fabric is easily moved by the wind. Be careful if you're doing it outside. Refitting is the reverse of removal. It's very easy to refit. Just be careful with panels because they do break. This video is actually part of our headliner video playlist, where we've got a video for every stage of the process you need to follow for changing your headliner, recovering your A-pillar, and even your back rear parcel shelf. So please take a look at the headliner video playlist if you've got this job in mind for your Jaguar XK8 Coupe. Finally, thank you very much for watching. Hope you find this interesting, and it helps you to get the best surface finish on your fabric recovering of your A-pillars. Please like, comment, share and subscribe for more XK8 videos.